I'll be a little bit more serious about our time of devotion tonight. So the passage I'm going to read is a little bit long, but I'm a fast reader. It's John 3, verses 1 through 21, well-known passage, but if you'll bear with me, we'll read all of it. There was a Pharisee named Nicodemus, a Jewish leader. He came to Jesus at night and said to him, Rabbi, we know that you are a teacher who's come from God, for no one could do these miraculous signs that you do unless God is with him. Jesus answered, I assure you, unless someone is born anew, it is not possible to see God's kingdom. Nicodemus asked, how is it possible for an adult to be born? It's impossible to enter the mother's womb for a second time and be born, isn't it? Jesus answered, I assure you, unless someone is born of water and spirit, it's not possible to enter God's kingdom. Whatever is born of flesh is flesh, and whatever is born of the spirit is spirit. Don't be surprised that I said to you, you must be born anew. God's spirit blows wherever it wishes. You hear it sound, but you don't know where it comes from or where it's going. It's the same thing with everyone who's born of the Spirit. So Nicodemus asked, how are these things possible? Jesus answered, you're a teacher of Israel and you don't know these things? I assure you that we speak about what we know and testify about what we have received or what we have seen, but you don't receive our testimony. If I have told you about earthly things and you don't believe, how will you believe if I tell you about heavenly things? No one has gone up to heaven except the one who came down from heaven, the human one. Just as Moses lifted up the snake in the wilderness, so must the human one be lifted up, so that everyone who believes in him will have eternal life. God so loved the world that he gave his only son so that everyone who believes in him won't perish, but will have eternal life. God didn't send his son into the world to judge the world, but that the world would be saved through him. Whoever believes in him isn't judged. Whoever doesn't believe in him is already judged because they don't believe in the name of God's only son. This is the basis for judgment. The light came into the world, and people love the darkness more than the light, for their actions are evil. All who do wicked things hate the light and don't come to the light for fear that their actions will be exposed to the light. Whoever does the truth comes to the light so that it can be seen that their actions were done in God. You know, Chris could probably pull 35 sermons out of that one passage. I mean, you're looking at your next year of this is what we're going to be delving into. There's just so much there. And I'm not a theologian, so I can't glean from it everything that I know that's there. Or frankly, I'm a little bit like Nicodemus. I don't understand it all. But what I do love is how every time I read it, something is new. We're going to really kind of zero in on verse 21. But before we get there, I just want to take a closer look at a few other things. I've heard it pointed out a lot of times that Nicodemus came at night. And so that meant that Nicodemus was maybe afraid, that he wanted to hide his interest in Jesus, that he was fearful of what the other Pharisees might say. He didn't want society coming against him. That's the kind of remarks I've heard. I honestly, I don't know. I suppose that that's very true. I suppose that it's possible. But living among other cultures has caused me to seriously question that interpretation. I wonder if perhaps that's not an interpretation that comes a little bit from our Western world. Many cultures have their gathering times at night. They have their teaching times at night. They have their big family gatherings at night. They work long days, dinners usually later, evenings in many parts of this part of the world, the evenings are cooler. And so that's when they gather. When this became kind of questionable to us and obvious to us that maybe something else was going on here is when we lived in West Africa for 8 years. People had to walk or take transport to get home. And mind you, home was not around the corner. So by the time they got home, meals are being cooked over an open fire. I'm sure in Jesus's time, we didn't have these wonderful, amazing gas ovens and things like we have now. So I'm sure the process of cooking an evening meal was pretty difficult, just like it was in West Africa. By the time you get the meal cooked, clean up, it was not a piece of cake in West Africa. I'm sure it wasn't there. You know, by the time when we were living in West Africa, by the time everything was done, you were looking at 10 o'clock before the evening preparation and mealtime was finished. And in West Africa, that's when the men said, okay, let's get together. And it was really funny. You could drive around the city, and outside the gates of houses, most houses had a gate that entered a courtyard, you would see these groups of men just sitting and drinking tea and running their lips. Now, mind you, I took offense at the fact that the women had to be home with the babies while the men were having a good time. But nevertheless, that's the way it worked. And the women, too, stayed up quite late and had their visiting taking place at night. And it was nothing for them to stay up really late. In fact, Butch did a Bible study. I guess it took a couple of years for him to get through the whole study. And at the men's request, this Bible study began at 10:30 at night and did not end until about 12:30 or 1, because the men said that's when we're together. That's when it's a natural time for us to talk about these things. So what if Nicodemus really was not afraid? What if Nicodemus realized Jesus was offering something different, something sincere? What if Nicodemus was searching for and desiring genuine understanding of what this rabbi was talking about that was so radical? And what if the reference to night isn't just about a time of day, but maybe a state of mind, a state of darkness? Well, then you go on in this passage and you read what is arguably, I believe, the most famous verse in all the Bible. In fact, you'll be happy to know that when a missionary goes overseas and we go through language study, and you usually have a religious track where you learn religious vocabulary right along with your secular vocabulary, what do you think the first verse we learn is? John 3:16. At one point, I could do John 3:16 in about 4 different languages, because we thought, hey, John 3:16, the gospel. That's it. You can meet anybody on the street and you can bring them to Jesus in one verse. Well, of course, sometimes you weren't paying a lot of attention to the context before and after, which can be game changers. And I think in this case, that's what's happening. After telling Nicodemus about God's love and God's desire that everyone be saved and not judged, Jesus returns to his original idea of night. He returns to his original idea of darkness. Darkness hides, light exposes. And people preferred the dark. They preferred the night. They didn't want their deeds exposed. They didn't want their evil ideas, their biases, their prejudices, their wrong thinking, their ugliness, whatever you want to call it. They did not want that brought into the light and revealed. They were actually afraid of the light. And then comes verse 21. Whoever does the truth comes to the light so that it can be seen that their actions were done in God. Do you catch that little phrase? Does the truth? Not believes the truth. Does the truth. The Greek word there is poion, and it means just what you think it does. It means to do, it means to act, it means to cause. We do truth. Truth is active. It's not merely believed. And light reveals what we hold to be true. Light reveals how we are acting on the truth. When we do truth, the light comes. And there's a reason for this. And Jesus is clear. Doing truth, causing truth, acting truth reveals God. And that's what God wants. God wants to be revealed. God wants there to be light, and God wants to be found. And that happens as we do truth, as we act truth, as we cause truth. I'm the first to admit that this year has been one that has far exceeded my imagination in terms of the phrase, what more could possibly go wrong? In fact, just don't ask it, because more can most definitely go wrong. And honestly, today was another example of that, right? Perhaps what has been exhausting to me, and perhaps to you in that process, is how much has been brought to light about deep needs, about hurts, and about the untruths that are in our world. But the other side of it, what has perhaps been the most exciting, has been over and over and over again, as I have witnessed, and I'm sure you have, God's children doing truth, God's children acting truth, God's children causing truth. And in so doing, even on the darkest of days, God's children has been revealing the love and the light that Jesus was telling Nicodemus about. Tonight, I'll be talking to you about CBF Global Missions. We have 3 commitments as we are working in this world of global poverty, global migration, and global church. Those commitments are to bear witness to Jesus Christ, to seek transformational development, and to cultivate beloved community. I want to say first and foremost, Oxford Baptist, you do truth. You act truth. You cause truth. You have been a bright light. We are so grateful for the ways that you partner, the ways you come alongside, the ways you encourage, the ways you give sacrificially. It's just amazing. And your pastor is going to be on a CBF gathering here next week because you're an example, and we can't say thank you enough. We are grateful for your willingness to do truth and to be light with us. For the record, and I can say this because nobody knows that it's not true, so it might be true, right? I don't think Nicodemus stayed in the dark. I just don't think he did. I think Nicodemus was earnest. I think Nicodemus was genuinely seeking and desiring to understand. And I think Nicodemus learned who was truth. And I think Nicodemus learned how to do truth. It's been a very rough year on every level for, I don't know of anybody that's not suffered in some way this year. Sometimes I feel guilty that my suffering has been minimal compared to so many people. But in the midst of all of this, there are so many Nicodemuses who are coming. They're coming in the dark, maybe because it's a time of day, but maybe it's because that's their state of mind. And they're coming to us because they know these are people who are in the light because they do truth, they act truth, and they cause truth. When we do the truth, the light comes. Thanks be to God. Yeah, so a lot has changed since we were with you a year and a half ago.
18 months ago, September of 2019, you and Butch came and preached, and you were in Houston at that point in time. So yeah, tell us about the change.
So, y'all are friends and encouragers. Not everybody gets the story, but has COVID not just upended your world? I mean, it just. But we were rocking along, to be honest. We pivoted to making face masks. I think we ended up making a total of 5,000, 6,000. We were especially proud of that time because we were able to connect with Fellowship Southwest and send masks to the border for folks who were in some of the refugee camps and the migrant camps so that they had protection. We partnered with Texas Network of Youth Services for workers and children who were on the fringes and in various and sundry facilities so that they all had masks. It was great. And then nobody needed masks because we had them. And all of a sudden we were, well, what do we do now? It was hard because the refugees in Houston didn't really understand everything that was going on. Their culture did not necessarily permit them to social distance. And so we were scrambling with ways to continue the ministry. We did things like use school tablets for preschool children. You've seen some of our other colleagues who have done English as a second language in a multiplicity of ways. We started finding ways that we could outsource to our workers. We took them off of full-time and put them on contract, but then found other ways that we could glean work for them from other places. And this lasted for a few months, but I don't know about you all, but we saw the handwriting on the wall. We did not see pandemic going away anytime too soon. So we woke up on a Thursday morning and life was pandemic normal, whatever that means, pandemic normal. And by Thursday night, Butch was retired and I had a different job. I mean, it happened just that fast. CBF was going through some restructuring. Everybody understood that this was going to mean different things for CBF field personnel. And so the opportunity came for those who were close to retiring to perhaps consider retiring a bit early. And honestly, it was only going to be like a year and a half early for Butch to retire. CBF had already talked about this particular position that I am now filling. They were talking about it long before pandemic, and we were already thinking in terms of this position. And so it seemed natural for Butch to go ahead and retire and for me to go ahead and move into this spot. So what is this spot? I now serve as the Offering for Global Missions advocate. They specifically wanted somebody with a long-term field personnel experience because field personnel are better equipped to share with our churches and with others what it means to serve as field personnel. We understand the partnerships, we understand the relationships. We've experienced so much encouragement from our churches that they felt like having somebody in that type of a position previously would be able to relate to churches in this way. But basically, it goes beyond that. We are working to create a culture within our fellowship where mission thrives, where it flourishes by upholding some core beliefs, by collective vision and social values. And yes, of course, the sharing of material resources. We build a culture where all of us together, it's not just about the field personnel, it's not just about Oxford Baptist, it's not just about the refugees in Houston, it's about all of us together working to become change makers. And part of my job is to help build that culture. So whether it's helping celebrate the impact of our field personnel around the world, sharing with folks like you and other groups, or perhaps just explaining what the CBF global distinctives are, even just bringing us together on bended knee and prayer, which I think is really important. I believe it's when we're praying together, that we're believing together, that we're seeking together, and that we're finding God together. So my new role encompasses all of those things. For those of you who are wondering, no, Threads did not go away. Threads by Nomads still very much exists, as does the off-ramp. We did move operations to the East Coast. One of the things that made it a little bit easy to make this decision is we did have to let go of our people in Houston. We couldn't source fabric. Orders were not coming in. It was a different time. You all know what the beginning of COVID was like. And by the time we hit August, we couldn't sustain full-time employees any longer. So we had let them go. So making the transition to the East Coast was a relatively easy thing. We were already anticipating a move here. So even before the move, we had in place a memorandum of understanding with CBF of North Carolina. So we've hit the ground running. We have, obviously, COVID has made it impossible for us to ramp up refugee ministry here in the Charlotte Metroplex area the way we might like to. But we have multiple projects overseas and in the States. I think that's one thing. And I know we're running out of time here, but I'm like Mark Wyatt. I can tell you stories all night long. Now that's just the truth of it. One of the things that I love about what we were able to do with the off-ramp as soon as all of this kind of escalated is we were able to join with other field personnel and undergird their work. I know you're familiar with the work in Uganda with Refuge and Hope, Jade and Sheila Acker, as well as with Missy Ward Angala and Amani Sasa. They both have programs where they are not only teaching skills that will lead to business, but then they're trying to get women particularly set up in business. We've been able to join them and help them in product design, help them in marketing strategy, and it's been beautiful. In fact, everything that we've created so far with Refuge and Hope has done beautifully. People have been so excited about it. We're in our second year of partnering with Missy and Amani Sasa with their basket weaving program. The beauty of it is that Threads by Nomad, we can offer them our help to build a business, to build marketable product, but then we have Threads by Nomad that can be a marketing arm for this. So I just love that. At the same time, we've got an asylum seeker in Washington, D.C., that we've been able to help her start a business with soaps and some, other body lotions and things like that. We have somebody that we've known in Kyrgyzstan for a long time, and we're able to come alongside her and build new product so that the women in Kyrgyzstan are more stable. That's a country where the women are particularly vulnerable to human trafficking. So to have them become stable where they're at and have a business that they can take care of themselves and their children means that they're not vulnerable to that. So it's been very strange. And we have been put in the position on numerous occasions of saying, what, God, really? Now this? Well, okay, we think. And then just kind of going with it. And it's been beautiful. When I say that there's been negative in this pandemic world, there has been. I can't minimize it. A prayer request I would have for you is Hyder. As pandemic was happening, we had kept him in business with us. We were still paying him full time, but I was aware that we were going to have to lay him off. And about the time I was ready to do that, they found out that his wife had leukemia. It's been a very difficult time. We're still able to outsource some work to Hyder that he does in Houston, and we just do it remotely. But when we put out word about what was going on with Hyder, the off-ramp developed an emergency relief fund. And enough money came in that fund that we were not only able to pay his wife's medical bills, all that existed at that time, as well as his back rent. We were able to offer emergency assistance to several other people. So, that's beautiful. That is really beautiful. So it's been hard. It's been difficult. But have you heard of the book or the phrase called "beautiful constraint"? It's an amazing book. I am working my way through it. You got it there? Yes. So the whole idea of this book is, okay, we got problems. We got things that are squelching us. We got things that are putting us down. We got things that are making it seem like we can't do this. But if we think about the constraint as something that's pushing us to do something perhaps a little bit different or a little bit better, or maybe a complete do-over, it turns into something amazing. And to me, that's kind of what this last year has been like. It's been a beautiful constraint. So yeah, I'd love to just talk with you, hear any questions or thoughts that you might have.
All right, so just to review, kind of as the kids say, TLDR, too long, didn't read. 18 months ago, you and Butch were missionaries working in Houston with international folks. The off-ramp was helping make Threads by Nomads go. And in the last 18 months, Butch is retired. Y'all have relocated to Rock Hill, South Carolina. You're now the advocate for offering for global missions. And the off-ramp and Threads have completely pivoted into a different phase of business.
Yep. And going as strong as ever. Another beautiful thing in this has been, most of y'all know, I think, that my daughter is my partner in the off-ramp and Threads. And about the time all this was happening, she was also starting a new business, and it made it the perfect time for her to really take over a lot of the marketing and communications and things like that has to go on. And that relieved me then to be able to focus on, okay, how are we going to get our refugees going here in Charlotte area? How are we going to move forward? Planning for our next project. Another thing we've done, I mean, guys, we have not been idle. This has not been, we have joined the Lupton Center out of Atlanta, and we have been going through an 18-month-long cohort where we learn best practices and leadership. We were so thrilled. We had so many of our stakeholders and participants that really engaged with us in an analysis process. And what we learned is that we're strong, we're doing well, but we needed to do some things to make our programs even better for our program participants. This time, when things are not quite as hectic, we've been able to put those processes into place so that we're better poised to start up again here on the East Coast.
All right. Who's got anybody have questions or comments or need any sort of clarification from Nell about kind of what they're doing and what's that play there? Nell, I'll tell you, this tends to be a quiet crowd sometimes, but y'all can
no worries.
Unmute yourselves and ask away.
They got it all.
Well, I will say I filmed yesterday, y'all. I filmed about an 8-minute sort of story and devotional about Oxford Baptist's I guess recent history with missions, and talked about how hopefully this is what you will glean, that like our women on mission for many years have kind of created this culture that our church engages in mission. And then a few years ago, Mark, told Steve, who's on the call tonight here, hey, maybe we should build a bunk bed. And I bet y'all could do that. And
yeah.
The prompting of the Holy Spirit, Steve became a bunk bed engineer, and then folks like Guy and Hattie Jean's husband Leonard went to work, and they built something 50 to 60 bunk beds, and then that gave way to ramps with rebuilding Hope, and then rebuilding that chapel, and so while those two things were happening, our church's women are kind of running these traditional programs, and our men are like getting to work. The McFarland Endowment is getting founded and funded, and
that's awesome.
Now we're this year we signed Encourager Church partnerships with 4 folks. It would have been 5, but your status changed, so we didn't get to sign one with you. But we didn't set out with a dream that we would have 5 Encourager Church relationships. We just kind of, you pull a thread and you just kind of follow where that thread goes. And it was a great exercise to be able to think back through what, kind of all the ways that God has worked alongside us and pushed us and challenged us.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Friendships like you that kind of that show up and encourage us also, So
it's our joy, totally our joy. We've appreciated you guys, and not just Butch and Nell appreciate you. I mean, honestly, you are such an example for what partnership looks like. I think the thing that's changed about missions, there was a time that, the missionary came and you watched their slides and you loved them and, you gave sacrificially, but they were kind of the window to the world, right? And that's not the way it is anymore. Now you're part of the journey with us. I mean, you join in. And I love that we live in a world that lets that happen.
Yeah, me too. And I guess I'll say confessionally, like, I didn't grow up in a church that was like really into missions. Like we gave our Lottie Moon money, and that's what we did. And, maybe we'd watch some slides or see a film, but like missionaries were people who were out there. And it's one of the cool parts of my adult life and ministry is getting to know folks like you all who are doing this work on the ground. And I joke, like, missionaries are real people too,
What?
yeah. But this year of kind of being able to learn how to Zoom so that 10, 11 of us can be on here to do this, we never would have imagined that a year ago.
No,
we can
agreed. Yeah,
have a cool chat with 12 folks and hopefully be challenged a little bit in our faith for these days and for this week.
Awesome.
Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Y'all got any questions or comments you want to make or add?
Nell,
Mhm.
we kind of entered halfway through, sort of, or we missed the introduction part because we couldn't get sound going on our computer.
Mhm.
But anyway, explain to me, because I missed it, what off-ramp is.
So the off-ramp helps, it has a very simple mission, helping displaced people thrive no matter where in the world they are. So we seek to do what we can do so that they are economically stable, using whatever gifts or resources they have right where they're at. We help them either market goods, develop goods, help them get perhaps the education. We've given tuition for some classes. Like we helped a lady in Mexico buy a loom and go to weaving classes. So we've helped some wood carvers that were in a migrant camp the other side of the border in Mexico. So basically, wherever they're at, what do they need to be sustained and to thrive so that they can become contributing members of whatever society they're a part of? But that also means if you're at risk for displacement. So for instance, that's why we developed a relationship with Kyrgyzstan, because the women are vulnerable to being trafficked. And so we want them to be economically stable so they're not vulnerable that way. But that's the simple mission of the off-ramp. And it looks really different. It's been everything from helping kids get into college to helping folks do resumes to helping, like I said, our CBF field personnel with some of the programs that they had going on.
And that's funded through CBF?
No, that is a nonprofit that we have.
Okay.
Yeah. You have about, I think it's 10 or 11 CBF field personnel now, maybe more, that have their own nonprofits through which they do their ministry. So that is not funded. That North Threads is funded through CBF at all.
So how do they thrive?
So the people that we're helping,
how do they provide resources for these folks?
How do we provide resources?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have people who give. Yeah, that's the bottom line. We have people who give, and we have churches who have partnered with us.
Well, thanks for clearing that up.
That's good.
Thanks, Ann. Anyone else? Everyone else good? Well, Nell, thanks so much for joining us and for
Well, thank you.
talking through to us. I love your treatment of John 3. We breezed through part of John 3 last week as part of the lectionary, and but as you said, I don't know if I could get 50 sermons out of it, but definitely 20 or so. And it is such a rich text, and one that anytime it pops up in the lectionary, the preacher's usually got to preach it. So
There you go.
yeah, so thank you for that. And
My joy.
I wish I had a great like trick benediction for you to give us, but I didn't come up with any today. So I had Laura read in Japanese for us, and I forget what I had someone else do. I've had a few different things, but I couldn't think of a good one for you. So how about you just close us with prayer? That'd be all right?
Sure, that'd be great.
Thanks.
Lord God, thank you so much that you are truth. Thank you that when we do truth, your light is all around. And thank you that you are bringing us through this pandemic, and you will bring us to the other side of this pandemic. And thank you for the precious life of your Son, Jesus Christ. Thank you for the resurrection that we're going to be celebrating in just a few weeks. Thank you for the life that brings us daily. In the powerful name of Jesus, we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thanks, everybody. Next week, we'll
Thank
talk
you.
Matt and Michelle from Barcelona. That'll be our last week. So,
Bye.
all right. Bye-bye, y'all.